Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and we're going to do a nice little, this is going to be a big mountain, and you'll see as I go here. This is on 12 by 15. This is the Master's Touch paper, which you can buy from Hobby Lobby. Inexpensive paper. I kind of like it because of its durability. It's got a little bit of a yellow cast to it, but it really holds up. There's no piling, and I like the way the paint lays on it, and it works really well. I mean, I've used quite a few sheets. I haven't noticed any variance. Here I've got some yellow ochre going down. I'm starting off with kind of prepping the sky, and using yellow ochre helps to kind of as a base coat, something in the yellowy, warm yellowy range. You can use it as thin as you like. I've gone a little heavier here for just dramatic purposes. And I'm coming back in, I've got a little indigo, a little ultramarine blue I've mixed in, and giving that some clouds, just some random clouds. Want some light coming through nicely. Now you'll see me try things. This is probably why it's best to watch the video. I'm putting a little purple on here. I just want to see how it looks against the sky. If it doesn't work, I'll try something else. So a lot of you see me do a lot of experimental stuff. I know people like to follow along, but I really recommend watching the video all the way through and then trying whatever you're going to try yourself. So I've gone back in, I've mixed some white in here and kind of tone that down a little bit. So just a little bit too much. As I paint from imagination or whatever I'm thinking, I kind of call audibles as I see them, and maybe I'll make a little bit of a change to what works and what doesn't work. And you can do the same thing. As long as it's wet, you can move things around if you don't go too dark. And I'm just getting a little back that yellow ochre down on the bottom there. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to go with some mountains here. Just the old standby. Mountains are always nice. And I'm coming in with the same sky colors, only a little bit stronger. The indigo and the ultramarine. Very, very dark purple here. And the darker seems to set better against the sky. And just taking my wet brush and removing a little bit of paint. And just getting a little more yellow ochre down in the center there. It'll dry back. Now you can do it this way too. As I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm thinking kind of along the lines of go big or go home. Something really big set against that backdrop, as you'll see here momentarily. Of course, this looks nice too. And I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And now we're back after about a couple of minutes of drying. And you'll see shortly how I'm going to change this up. I'm going to go ahead and put some bigger mountains in here. A little more blue on here. And as you can see, it's probably not going to work against those smaller mountains, so we're just going to paint over that. But I'm going to add a little bit of this color here. I've mentioned it in previous videos. This is Bleed Proof White by Doc Martin. It's a good white. It works a little differently than gouache. You just have to try it. You just have to trust me a little bit on that. And that gouache is a little thicker. It tends to dry back more, and this white is really nice. So as you can see, I'm gonna go over these mountains on the bottom. Look at how quickly we've changed this scene up. And so if you use a little bit of water with it and you just kind of let it run a little bit, you can make instant snowy mountains. So I'm just going to work on carving these mountains a little bit. Using the fan brush. And you can sit here and you can be as detail oriented as you like. Since this is the main object of interest in here, I want it to look realistic. And while it's wet, you can come back in with the darker colors, as I'm doing here, and you can create shadow colors. A little bit of white still on the brush. And you can see how I'm just kind of sculpting this in. Just coming down and creating slabs in the side of the mountain. Isn't that nice? Just an instant shadow color. The way it works in with the color. Now here I take my large, I have a large, this is just a generic large sort of hake brush. And I use it for blending. It's very soft. I don't really paint with it. Maybe if I was doing a very large wash. But I'd use that to blend the paint in, give it a soft, swept look. So I'm just going to let that sit for a minute, let it marinate a little bit, and jump to the bottom here and start creating some foliage at the bottom. And I'm just using the bristles of the hake brush with some greens and yellows and just dancing in some foliage there. Trying to get some perspective as if I'm looking, through some foliage up to this mountain. And now here I'm just going to pop in some darks just to get an idea for contrast. It's the darks that are within the mountain color and the sky cloud color, just to offset that. So now as this mountain dries, or has dried a little bit, I'm going to shift my focus back up to the top here now. Work on these peaks a little bit more. It just needs a little something, otherwise it just looks like a mound. And so I'm coming back. It's not 100% dry, but I'm just going to kind of shape out these peaks a little bit more. So I'm going back to my original sky color and mountain color with that little indigo and blue. There's probably still a little white just getting contaminated in, which is fine. And I'm just going to shape out a little bit more to this. And I like the way it blends really well. So I put a little bit of my shadow color there. You'll see I'm going to take now a little bit of white and create another peak here just to give a little more dimension to this mountain. Just coming back in and using the white. To me, this PH Martin bleed proof white, it doesn't stand out like when you use gouache. Gouache tends to have a little shiny, like bright, that zinc look to it, and it has a tendency to kind of stand out a little like a sore thumb in a way, for me. I mean, when you put it on the wall and you look at it from a distance, you can't notice so much, but it's why a lot of people don't really like to use too much white. They'll use it a little bit as an accent color. But you can see here in using this that it's a softer, when it dries, it's a softer white. Okay, so I think what we need here now is one more peak, and I'll put another one in here with the white. We'll put another one up top. It's a very, very broad-shouldered mountain. It's not a high. Sometimes I feel like I make them a little too pyramid-looking, too pointy. So I was trying to stay away from that here. And I'm going to take, again, that shadow color and just get a little extra peak there. Okay, so I'm going to take and blend that in a little bit. Just take my soft brush. And it still dries kind of the same speed as regular watercolor. So now here at this point, I'm not so sure what I want to do in here. I'm thinking some snow down in the bottom, but I'm going to probably have some trees or something filling in. I'm thinking some pine trees around the side, so I'm not really sure. So I'm kind of going a little bit by the seat of my pants here, and I'm just filling in a little bit of the snow. Of course, we don't have that yellow that I had put in there earlier, which is fine. But we'll just see how things go here. I'm thinking maybe a snow field or, something along those lines. Okay, so here I'm just going to soften that up a little bit. Take, again, my soft brush. I haven't washed it, and when I have this brush, I'll wash it at the end, and then it'll dry by the next time I paint again, and I don't put any water or anything on it. It's just the soft bristles. Again, just a little bit of blending, and I'm going to do a quick dry and edit out some of the drying, so you don't have to watch all of that. Once I get to a point where I don't want to disturb something, I'll dry it. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop in some pine trees using my fan brush. I'll start out a little more to the green side. If it looks better to go a little darker, then I'll come back with some darks. Depending on how it contrasts, better to start off a little lighter and then come back with a little darker paint over the top. Should you decide, well, the tone would look a little better set against, the background. So I'll put a couple of trees here. And just utilizing the bristles to make the shape of the pine. Leave a little light in between. And I'll do the same on this side. And what I'll do is because I'm not so sure with that middle, I'm going to just put some nice little lower pines in the middle here. A little shorter. We'll just go across and we'll just make more pines. I think that'll have a nice look to it. We don't have to worry about that middle part, what to do with it. We'll let the foreground take control. Now see here I went a little bit darker. I could come in with a little yellow on top and highlight it. And if it doesn't look right, well, then I'll just go a little bit darker. Because yellow looks, you can sit it on top nicely. But I fear that is probably a little too much. So no problem whatsoever. We'll come back in with that darker color and just kind of fill in some spaces. And we don't want to go too heavy because you'll get that bronzing issue. I talked about that before. If you put too thick of dark paint on there, it'll look shiny. And I mean, it might not bother some people. I don't really care for it. And because I've used such heavy paints and paintings, I've discovered it's just something that I don't like. You can varnish your painting at the end with a spray varnish, and it'll make the whole thing look shiny, which helps. It looks more like an oil or acrylic painting. But it's just something I try to avoid. So I just gave that a little spray. I used a little yellow, actually, little yellow ochre spray that I have, and I want that to run and blend in a little bit. I'm going to give it a quick dry. Okay, I'm giving that a little bit of a yellow spray. Fill in those little areas in between, and I'm doing that while I'm drying just to keep things from running too much. Okay, so after a little bit of drying, I'm going to take a little bit of that white again and just highlight just a light amount of that white, a little bit watered down, just hitting some of the branches. Just hitting, leaving just a hint, like maybe snow or highlights on the trees. Works really well for that, and it dries just the way you hope. It's got kind of a milky white effect to it. As you can see, we got that effect that I'm going for. Okay, so last but not least, I'm going to pop in just a couple of birds up on top, and then we'll get a look at what it looks like in a mount. I have to kind of move my clips out of the way. And then I always use a crusty mount with paint on it while things are still wet, because you'll mess up I've messed up so many mats getting paint on them. I need to go back and like paint white over them. So there is the mostly finished painting. If I see any little things, this is when I'll make a little adjustments. All right, so there you have it. There's the finished monumental mountain. and just a little closer up view. And finally, one more time in the mat. Thank you so much for watching and supporting me, everyone. Have a great week.